Morning guys, I'm Blackie for Shaman's Forge Bushcraft. Well, this is the conclusion of the Keeping Warm series. I've dealt with a lot of topics in here of clothing, food, sheltering, etc. And today is the final bit. I'm actually going to construct a shelter, show you the hows and whys of why I do it in an actual setting. I hope you enjoy it and I hope you learn something. Warmed up on me. I'd hoped to do this and it good and cold, and as you would expect in Alabama, it's warmed up. It's February, but warmed up. So we're gonna go build a shelter that we really wouldn't need tonight, but what the heck, it's a learning curve, right? So grab your pack, grab your hat, come on, time to go see what to do. Hang on, we'll be there in a minute. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. I got several dead limbs right here that I can snap off, but no Widowmaker. Enclosed, good heavy windbreak. Now, checking my direction, because it's in the early afternoon and the sun is sort of westish. Perfect. North. So my predominant wind is going to be coming in from that direction. Now it looks a little open right there, but actually that is a very thick, back that way, like this over here. Very thick timber that's going to act as a windbreak for me. I'll face my shelter between these two this way, so the predominant wind will be coming from my back. If it shifts to the northwest, or if it shifts to the northeast, or due north, I'm covered because this is kind of oriented slightly off of true north. So I'll put my shelter right here. Okay. Got good cover. I got plenty of firewood laying around. A lot of shed and lost limbs laying everywhere. Water is down there about 150 yards. There's a spring that goes into the lake we talked about. So because of that, I'll be able to cut down there and fill up my pot and etc. And I'll do that well before dark. Go ahead and stock up. I got plenty of resources. I got shelter. And I even got these great big old bow-hunking pine cones for fire starters everywhere. So I'm set. Okay, let me get my shelter started and I'll be right back with you. Stay with me. Okay, we've got it basically put up. Now, what I've done is I have took two of the reusable space blankets and turned them into my shelter, like Dave Canterbury talks about an emergency shelter. I found it to be very effective, especially in the cold. Now we're talking about shelters and why we need small shelter. This is why. I've erected it with a ridge line and set up my 4 stakes. Yes, it's real low. Let me move out of the way and see it a little better. Whole shelter. It's very low. I left that in intentionally down a little bit lower because this should be just big enough for me to crawl in with just a little bit of a pitch to catch the heat, because I want my heat to be trapped in here. If I don't make a big shelter, I don't have a big shelter to heat. This is small. It's going to take every bit of it and hold it. Now, as you can see in here, I filled the shelter clean to the top with dry pine straw. Got in here and crushed it down, filled it up again and crushed it down a second time. So now I have a bed of that much pine straw underneath me. I've got my 55-gallon drum liner that I'm going to put across the top, and then I'm going to get in here and wrap up in my wool blanket. The outside edge will be sealed with leaves, straw, and etc. And this will trap any residual air coming up from the back, because remember, the dominant wind comes from that way. Now, it's small. I'm going to get in here right quick so you can see just how small for just a moment. But just big enough for me to lay down. I can come up on one shoulder if I need to, but this is a sleeping shelter. I'm not going to be doing a lot of work in here. I can sit out front if I need to do that. This is designed to hold the heat. We've done everything for warmth. Small shelter heats fast, and this is going to trap warm air in here in these low areas and help keep me warm. The reflective side down is going to help reflect the heat that comes this way back down to me. The fire is going to be right here. Now, let's talk about the fire for a second. I'm going to start the fire very small. I'm not going to make a fire pit. If anything, I'm going to rake up dirt and make a fire mound, because down in the hole, once it burns below that, you're in the shade. So I want it up, maybe in 2 or 3 inches in elevation. I've got these big old pine cones for my fire starter. And right here at the head of my shelter, I put a bunch of smalls that I can reach up and grab when I need to. Now, you want to make sure, I have not cleaned this out thoroughly yet, all this connected pine straw is gone. You want a bare earth area for at least 3 or 4 feet around your fire. Remember, you're sleeping on a pile of debris. A spark can ruin your day. So do your best to minimize that, okay? Now, I'm using these space blankets. What if I was using strictly a debris shelter? Well, one other piece of gear that I carry would be very essential for that. But I'm still going to use it for this, but let me show you. One of these Mylar space blankets. Now, if I was using strictly a debris shelter, this would go inside the debris shelter reflecting down on me. I'd tear it in half. Half would be up there, and the other half would be out on these sticks right here to make a heat reflection. Like so. Now this is going to be properly torsioned up, buried along the edge with dirt, tucked back, and etc. Right now this is just for demonstration right quick. But now I've got a heat reflector in front of my shelter reflecting the heat excuse me, back toward me. Now, any heat that went that way is going to bounce back toward me. I angled it in about 5 or 10 degrees so it's not bouncing up. It's bouncing it back low into here. Any heat that misses me and hits the reflective on this side is going to reflect it down to me. I'm set. Now, the fire. I've talked about a long fire. And what that means in English is I'm going to have long poles. When I find something dead that I can harvest, I'm going to knock the smalls off of it, but I'm going to leave the pole long. And those poles are going to be stored behind this heat reflector right here. And for the most of the night, when I'm just in camp, you know, getting ready, it's going to be the small stuff. I'm going to keep a small fire going, enough to keep me warm, enough to keep my core temperature up, but it's going to be right here and relatively small. When it's time for me to go to bed, that's when I'm going to take those poles and I'm going to lay the ends of those poles in. And initially, I'm going to take a couple of them and just lay them crossways right here and let them burn in half. That'll get 4 burning ends started. Once that gets going, I'll scoot the poles further in, leaving the long end of the pole, out here in the darkness, and I'll curl up and go to bed. When I wake up in a few hours, and those poles have started to burn down, not only is the fire burned here, the fire starts to spread outward. I scoop the poles in. Now, it should not get past my heat reflector, because once it gets out here, it's getting into the cold. What are the 3 legs of a fire? Oxygen, heat, and fuel. It gets out here, it's losing its heat. It'll want to die off out here. So I scoot it back in, and it keeps going here. So now, rather than me having to get up and restart, all I got to do is reach up and pull, 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 and roll back over. And I get 2 or 3 more hours. I'm leaving the log whole, so it takes harder and longer to burn, but I have a good bed of coals right here, which will cook and make it burn. If I wake up and my fire is starting to struggle a little bit, that's what this pile of smalls is up here. I don't even have to get out of bed. I just reach up and grab and throw a few more on, reach under me and grab a handful of dry pine straw, throw onto it, and roll over. This should carry me down easily into the teens just with this blanket, because the blanket is not the heat retention. The blanket is simply another layer. Remember, I've eaten to make me generate heat. I'm wearing proper clothing, so I'm insulated. I'm on insulation from the ground. I have a thermal barrier, so dampness is not getting me from the ground. I have my outer clothing, which is holding the heat. Then I have a blanket wrapped around that. Then I have a shelter reflecting heat to me. I am sheltered from the wind, I'm sheltered from the ground, and I have any heat lost reflected back. That is as good as it's going to get. I mean, you got to expect some discomfort in life. But if you've done all of these steps and you're still cold, you must be in Nome, Alaska. Because this shelter in my south is too warm, except in the very dead of winter. Now you notice my shirt sleeves? It's February in Alabama right now. It's 72 today. The low last night was 31. The low projected tonight is 28. 40, 50 degree temperature drop between now and sunup in the morning. I would use this shelter tonight with just this blanket, because with my heat and all of my insulation, I'm gonna be okay. At the worst, I'll wake up cool once, twice a night, and I'll have to push my poles back in. That's it. Well guys, I hope this series has helped you. I've enjoyed making it. But as far as Blackie goes, that's what I know about keeping warm in the winter. That's about the sum total of it. I've tried to pass on to you everything I know about it. Hopefully it's given you some ideas, and I hope that it helps you in your woods enjoyment and getting out and enjoying and not being afraid to go out in the woods in the winter. Enjoy it. My favorite time of the year is the winter, and I love being out there and enjoying the coolness, the hunting, the companionship, and etc. And I hope you will too. So this is the end of the Keeping Warm series. I hope to start another series later today. Till then, I'm Blackie for Shaman's Forge Bushcraft. Wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.